And so we were talking about memory, and instead of this, my original line was, "There's no stillness in memory. When you think of one thing, it makes you think of other stuff, and you're jumping all around." Then I rethought that. That's not true, I don't think. I think instead of no stillness, it's kind of the opposite. I think memory is a point. It's extremely still. It's almost static. And we began talking about this the other day from the standpoint of someone asking you the question, and it's a lovely question. What is your earliest memory? Oh, see, instantly everyone has a thought. And I call that not a gut reaction. Initially I thought, oh, your gut reaction. No, it's a synapse. It's a synapse that fires when you hear the question, what is your earliest memory? What is your first memory? And so I ran through this the other day, and a few different things came up. And one of the things I thought was the memory was a dot. It's a point. It's a thing that happened. And then around it, there's like this hazy fog of all the things that happened around it. And sometimes I remember more of it and less of it or whatever, but it's like a point. It's not all the things that happened in that moment. The one I thought of was we were in India, in Mumbai, in my cousin's place, and they had 2 sons and a daughter. We were 2 daughters and a son. And I and the middle son, boy, he was a very exciting fellow and loved to be in nature and loved to handle wild animals and be out, and wonderful human being. And he taught me a lot about the world and about nature. And in this instance, he was the first human being to ever hand me a snake. So he was running through the jungle, and I was running behind him. And I remember it being just crazy. I didn't know where I was. I was just running and just following him. And then when he stopped and he grabbed it, and he was holding it, and I was looking at it, and then he had ascertained that it wasn't venomous, and he thrust it into my hands because he wanted me to handle it, showing me how and so on. That memory, it's an instant, which is the snake instant, but then it's this cloud of stuff around it. The running through the jungle part, I vaguely, and him turning and him being taller than me, and etc. So I had that memory, and then I asked myself, okay, so if that is a point in time, can we go backward from that point in time? Can I think backward? Okay, so then I started going, okay, so that would have been 74, but that means I was already in elementary school. But I remember being in kindergarten. I remember moving into this house. We were in an apartment first when we first came to the United States. I was 2 years old then. Would have been 3 years old in that house. But I remember that because of pictures of the house and stuff. But do I remember the house itself? I feel when I think, yes, I remember jungle gym, the door, trapped, the slamming door. We had bunk beds, and my sister and I slept on bunk beds. So that would be even earlier. So several things came up when we did this the other day. One of them is, it's the idea of a dot, a point, still point that is a memory, and then a bunch of stuff that's around it, that's the real whole memory. And then the other thing is how much that's just happening here. You just looked at me sitting here what am I doing when you're looking at me doing that? What is happening? Nothing physical is happening. I'm not reaching it and grabbing it. Something is going on in the mind. And so I began thinking about that. The synapse fires first, then more stuff goes around it in my mind while I try to search for the memory and the thought of the memory and the experience of the memory. And I wanted to see, I asked a few different people since then. So I would put it to you as well. Is it different, the way we think about memory in different countries and cultures? If you're Chinese and you think about your earliest memory, is it different from me? If you're French, if you're, Australian. So this might be an example of a topic for this show, the AntiClimactic NonShow, which is not a show and will rarely be climactic.